All right, guys, let's do a little recap. So, we're reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, Akotar. And the main character's name, Wei. Wait, what happened? Do we stop the timer now? No, we stop when I finish. We stop when I go to bed. So, the main character, their name is Feyre. So, her name is Feyre, and she has two sisters, Elaine, middle child, and the oldest, Nesta, okay? And they're both brats, all right? They came from a lineage of richer folk. They are what some might call aristocrats of some sort. And they lost a lot of their money. They lost all their money, so now they're like kind of broke and peasants, and they are struggling to stay alive. However, the oldest sister and the middle child still like to believe that they are rich. So they kind of act that way. Their mom died, not entirely sure why. She was just sick, I think. And the dad is severely injured, so he can't really do much for work. So the family's struggling, right? And the youngest, Feyre, hunts, and she hunts for food on the table. And that's kind of how it started, where she was kind of hunting and she found a deer in the woods. And she's like, oh, this will last us for another week or so. And as she went to find the deer, a wolf was actually about to eat the deer. And so she was very upset about that. And the wolf kind of attacked the deer. And she killed the wolf who attacked the deer. So she brought back the skinned wolf and the deer back home. Now the issue is there is such thing as fairies. Okay, what are fairies? They're a mythical creatures, and there's like a treaty between humans and fairies where you can't really kill them. Otherwise, you have to trade a life for a life. It's kind of like a rule that they kind of abide by. And she didn't know that that wolf was a fairy. Or fae? Are they called fays? I thought they said fairies. Anyway. So she killed the wolf, and these mythical creatures can appear in wolves or in anything really. They're just kind of smarter animals, from what I can gather. But yeah, so she ended up killing them and brought the pelts and the food home to the family, fed the family, and then went to go sell the pelts to some mercenary that she met. And the mercenary was telling Feyre all these crazy stories about how dangerous all these mythical creatures actually are. They're fae? Okay. So, yeah. And then on the way home, they got home, they started eating what was remainder of the food after they sold all the skinned stuff, and then in comes a fae, barges into their stone cottage where the whole family was eating, and it ends up being a fae, knocks on the door, and this fae has like antlers, it has insane paws, it's like a deer with like mixed with a bear, and it was huge, and it was pissed, and it was like, yo, who the fuck killed that wolf? And everyone's like, no one, what's going on? And then Feyre was like, fuck it, it was me, sup bitches. And then the fae was like, do you know what that means? And then Feyre was like, what? I forgot the rule. And then the fae was like, well, it's a life for a life. And then Feyre was like, all right, just kill me outside then. And then she walks outside, and then the fae was like, well, you have two options. I either kill you right now, or I take you back to our land, and you live the remainder of your life there. As if that wolf would have. And Feyre was like, all right, let's do it then. And the family like encouraged her and told her to go do it. And yeah, so Feyre is now heading out with this fae to Prithian, which is the mythical creature land just north of them. So now that's exactly where we left off. I know I skipped a couple of parts, but I had to kind of summarize 5 chapters. So hopefully that was a good sort of recap for you guys. Anyway, ready? Chapter 5. All right. Every step toward the line of trees was too swift, too light, too soon, carrying me to whatever torment and misery awaited. I didn't dare look back at the cottage. We entered the line of trees, darkness beckoned beyond, but a white mare was patiently waiting, unbound beside a tree, her coat like fresh snow in the moonlight. She only lowered her head, as if in respect of all things, as the beast lumbered up to her. He motioned with a giant paw for me to mount. Still, the horse remained calm, even as he passed close enough to gut her in one swipe. It had been years since I'd ridden. I'd only ridden a pony at that, but I savored the warmth of the horse against my half-frozen body. As I climbed into the saddle, and she set into a walk, without light to guide me, I let her trail the beast. They were nearly the same size. I wasn't surprised when we headed northward, towards Fairy. Okay, so, yeah, see, look, okay. This is what I'm saying. Like, you guys are saying it's Fae, but it says Fairy, like Fairy territory. It says Fairy, toward Fairy territory. It's like Fae, but then R-I-E. Is it not Fairy? So that's what part where I'm a little... Oh, Fae and Fairy, the same? Oh. Interesting. Okay. Oh, okay. Fae is like the male fairies, I think. All right. Okay. Interesting. It's explained later. All right. Let's keep going then. Toward Fairy territory. I'll call it Fairy while I read it Fairy. So let's keep going. Though my stomach clenched so tightly it ached. Live with him? I could live out the rest of my mortal life on his lands. Perhaps this was merciful, but then he hadn't specified in what manner exactly I would live. The treaty forbade fairies from taking us as slaves, but perhaps that excluded humans who'd murdered fairies. We'd likely go to whatever rift in the wall he'd used to get here to seal me, and once we went through the invisible wall, once we were in Prithian, there were no way for my family to ever find me. I'd be little more than a lamb in a kingdom of wolves. Wolf. Murdered a fairy. That was what I'd done. My throat went dry. I'd killed a fairy. I couldn't bring myself to feel badly about it. Not with my family left behind me, to surely starve. Not when it meant one less wicked, awful creature in the world. The beast had burned my ash arrow, so I'd have to rely on luck to get even a splinter of the wood again, if I was to stand a chance of killing him, or slowing him down. Knowledge of that weakness, of their susceptibility to ash, was the only reason we'd ever survive against the High Fae during the ancient uprising, a secret betrayed by one of their own. My blood chilled further as I uselessly scanned for any signs of the narrow trunk and explosion of branches that I'd learned marked ash trees. I'd never seen the forest so still. Whatever was out there had to be tamed compared to the beast beside me. Despite the horse's ease around him. Hopefully he would keep other fairies away after we entered this realm. Prithian. The word was a death knell that echoed through me again and again. Lands. He said he had lands, but what kind of dwelling? My horse was beautiful, and its saddle was crafted of rich leather, which meant he had some sort of contact with civilized life. I'd never heard the specifics of what the lives of fairies or high fae were like. Never heard much about anything other than their deadly abilities and appetites. I clenched the reins to keep my hands from shaking. There were few first-hand accounts of Prithian itself. The mortals who went over the wall, either willingly as tributes from the children of the blessed or stolen, never came back. I learned most of the legends from villagers through my father had occasionally offered up a milder tale or two on the nights he made an attempt to remember we existed. As far as we knew, the High Fae was still governed. As far as we knew, the High Fae still governed the northern parts of our world. From our enormous island over the narrow sea separating us from the massive continent, across deepless fjords and frozen wastelands and sand-blasted deserts, all the way to the great ocean on the other side. Some fairy territories were empires, some were overseen by kings and queens. Then there were places like Prythian, divided and ruled by 7 high lords, being of such unyielding power that legend claimed they could level buildings, break apart armies, and butcher you before you could blink. I didn't doubt it. No one had ever told me why humans chose to linger in our territory, when so little space had been granted to us, and we remained in such close proximity to Prythian. Fools. Whatever human had stayed here after the war must have been suicidal fools to live so close. Even with the century-old treaty between the mortal and the fairy realms, there were rifts in the warded wall separating our lands, holes big enough for those lethal creatures to slip into our territory to amuse themselves with tormenting us. That was the side of Prythian that the children of the blessed never deigned to acknowledge. Perhaps the side of Prythian I'd soon witness. My stomach turned. Live with him? I reminded myself again and again. Live, not die. Though I suppose I could live in a dungeon, he would likely lock me up and forget that I was there, forget that human needed things like food and water and warmth. Prowling ahead of me, the beast's horns spiraled through the night sky, and tendrils of hot breath curled from the snout. We had to make camp at some point. The border of Prythian was days away. Once we stopped, I would keep awake for the entirety of the night and never let him out of my sight. Even though he burned my ash arrow, I'd smuggled my remaining knife in my cloak. Maybe tonight would grant me an opportunity to use it. But it was not my own doom I contemplated as I let myself tumble into dread and rage and despair. As we rode on, the only sound snow crunching beneath paws and hooves, I alternated between a wretched smugness at the thought of my family starving, and thus realizing how important I was, and a blinding agony at the thought of my father begging in the streets, his ruined leg giving out on him as he stumbled from person to person. Every time I look at the beast, I could see my father limping through town, pleading for copper to keep my sisters alive. Worse, what Nesta might resort to in order to keep Elaine alive. She wouldn't mind my father's death, but she would lie and steal and sell anything for Elaine's sake, and her own as well. I took in the way the beast moved, trying to find any weakness. I could detect none. What matter of fairy are you? I asked, the words nearly swallowed up by the snow and trees and star-heavy sky. He didn't bother to turn around. He didn't bother to say anything at all. Fair enough. I killed his friend, after all. I tried again. Do you have a name? Or anything to curse him by? A huff of air that could have been a bitter laugh. Does it even matter to you, human? I didn't answer. He might very well change his mind about sparing me, but perhaps I would escape before he decided to gut me. I would grab my family and we'd stow away on a ship and sail far, far away. Perhaps I would try to kill him, regardless of the futility, regardless of whether it consisted in another unprovoked attack, just for being the one who came to claim my life. My life. When these fairies valued ours so little. The mercenary had survived. Maybe I could too. Maybe. I opened my mouth to again ask him for his name. But a growl annoyance ripped out of him. I didn't have a chance to struggle, to fight back, when a changed metallic tang stung my nose. Exhaustion slammed down upon me, and blackness swallowed me whole. What? Huh. I awoke with a jolt atop the horse, secured by invisible bonds. The sun was already high. Magic. That's what that tang had been. What was keeping my limbs tucked in tight, preventing me from going for my knife? I recognized the powder deep in my bones. From some collective mortal memory and terror, how long had it kept me unconscious? How long had he kept me unconscious, rather than have to speak to me? Gritting my teeth, I might have demanded answers from him, might have shouted to where he still lumbered ahead, heedless of me. But then chirping birds flitted past me, and a mild breeze kissed my face. I spied a hedge-bordered metal gate ahead. My prison or my salvation, I couldn't decide which. 2 days. It took 2 days for my cottage to reach the wall and enter the southernmost border of Prithian. Had I been held in an enchanted sleep for that long? Bastard. The gate swung open, without porter or sentry, and the beast continued through. Whether I wanted to or not, my horse followed him. All right. Chapter 6. Do we continue? Do we read one more? Or do we stop here, chat? What are we thinking? Another? All right. Let's keep going. Mushy, the tier 1 sub. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right. Chapter 6. The estate sprawled across a rolling green land. I'd never seen anything like it. Even our former manor couldn't compare. It was veiled in roses and ivy, with patios and balconies and staircases sprouting from its alabaster sides. The grounds were encased by woods, but stretched so far that I could barely see the distant line of the forest. So much color, so much sunlight and movement and texture. I could hardly drink it in fast enough. To paint it would be useless, would never do it justice. My awe might have subdued my fear had the place not been so wholly empty and silent. Even the garden, through which we walked, following a gravel path to the main door of the house, seemed hushed and sleeping. Above the array of amethyst irises, above the array of amethyst irises and pale snowdrops and butter yellow daffodils swaying in the balmy breeze, the faint stench of metal ticked my nostrils. Of course it would be magic, because it was spring here. What wretched power did they possess to make their land so different from ours? To control the seasons and weather as they owned them? Sweat trickled down my spine as my layers of clothes turned suffocating. I rotated my wrist and shifted into the saddle. Whatever bonds had held me were gone. The ferry meandered on ahead, leaping nimbly up the grated marble staircase that led to the giant oak doors in one mighty fluid movement. The door swung open for him, on silent hinges, and he prowled inside. He planned this entire arrival, no doubt, keeping me unconscious so I didn't know where I was, didn't know the way home, or what other deadly fairy territories might be lurking between me and the wall. I felt for my knife, but found only layers of frayed clothes. The thought of those claws pawing through my cloak to find my knife made my mouth go dry. I shoved away the fury and terror and disgust as my horse came to a stop on her own accord at the front of the stairs. The message was clear enough. The towering estate house seemed to be watching, waiting. I glanced over my shoulder towards the still open gates. If it were to bolt, it would have to be now. South. All I had to do was go south, and I would eventually make it to the wall. If I didn't encounter anything before then, I tugged on the reins, but the mare remained stationary. Even as I dug my heels into their sides, I let out a low, sharp hiss. Fine. On foot. Oh, shit. Mushy with a gifter. Thank you. Appreciate it. Wait, how much time do we have left on the subathon? How much time do we have left on the subathon? 19 minutes? The hairline transplant ain't cost that much. Invest while you can. What's wrong with my hair? What? What's wrong with my hair? I feel like, honestly, for being 30, I feel like my hair looks good. Yeah, we got 19 minutes. We're chilling. We could finish another chapter. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Oh yeah. Even as I dug my heels into her sides, I let out a low, sharp hiss. Fine, on foot. My knees buckled as I hit the ground, bits of light flashing in my vision. I grasped the saddle and winced as soreness and hunger racked my senses. Now, I had to go now. I made to move, but the world was still spinning and flashing. Only a fool would run with no food, no strength. I wouldn't get half a mile like this. I wouldn't get half a mile before he caught me and tore me to ribbons, as he promised. I took a long, shuddering breath. Food. Getting food. And then running at the next opportune moment. It sounded like a solid plan. When I was steady enough to walk, I left the house at the bottom of the stairs, taking the steps one at a time, my breath tight in my chest. I passed through the open doors and into the shadows of the house. Inside, it was even more opulent. Black and white checkered marble shone at my feet, flowing to the countless doors and sweeping staircase. A long hall stretched ahead to the giant glass doors at the other end of the house, and through them I glimpsed a second garden, a garden than the one out front. No sign of a dungeon. No shouts of pleas rising up from the hidden chambers below. No, just the low growl from a nearby room, so deep that it rattled the vases overflowing with fat clusters of hydrangea atop the scattered hall tables. As if in response, an open set of polished wooden doors swung wider to my left, a command to follow. My fingers shook as I rubbed my eyes. I'd known the High Fae had once built themselves palaces and temples around the world, buildings that my mortal ancestors had destroyed after the war out of spite, but I never considered how they might live today, the elegance and wealth they might possess. Never contemplated that the fairies, these feral monsters, might own estates grander than any mortal dwelling. I tensed as I entered the room. A long table, longer than we'd ever possessed at our manor, filled most of the space. It was laden with food and wine, so much food, some of it wafting tendrils of steam that my mouth watered. At least it was familiar, and not some strange fairy delicacy. Chicken, bread, peas, fish, asparagus, lamb. It could have been a feast at any mortal manor. Another surprise. The beast padded to the oversized chair at the head of the table. I lingered by the threshold, gazing at the food, all that hot, glorious food that I couldn't eat. That was the first rule that we were taught as children, usually in songs or chants. If misfortune forced you to keep company with a fairy, you never drank their wine, never ate their food, ever. Unless you wanted to wind up enslaved to them in mind and soul, unless you wanted to wind up dragged back to Prithian. Well, the second part had already happened, but I might stand a chance at avoiding the first. The beast plopped into the chair, the wood groaning, and in a flash of white light turned into a golden-haired man. What? They can turn into men? They can turn into humans. Whoa. Is the timer broken? It's okay. I'll fix the timer. I'm surprised it's broken though. And in a flash of white light, turned into a golden-haired man. I stifled a cry and pushed myself against the paneled wall beside the door, feeling for molding of the threshold, trying to gauge the distance between me and escape. This beast was not a man, not a lesser fairy. He was one of the High Fae, one of their ruling nobility, beautiful, lethal, and merciless. He was young, or at least what I could see of his face seemed young. His nose, cheeks, and brows were covered by an exquisite golden mask, embedded with emeralds shaped like whorls of leaves. Some absurd High Fae fashion, no doubt. It left only his eyes, looking the same as they had in the beast form, strong jaw and mouth for me to see. And the latter tightened into a thin line. You should eat something, he said. Unlike the elegance of his mask, the dark green tunic he wore was rather plain, accented only with a leather baldric across his broad chest. It was more for fighting than style. Even though he bore no weapons, I could detect not just one of the High Fae, but a warrior, too. I didn't want to consider what might require him to wear a warrior's attire and try not to look too hard at the leather of the baldric gleaming in the sunlight, screaming or streaming in through the bank of windows behind him. I hadn't seen a cloudless sky like that in months. He filled a glass of wine from an exquisitely cut crystal decanter and drank deeply, as if he needed it. I inched towards the door, my heart beating so fast I thought I'd vomit. The cool metal of the door's hinges bit into my fingers. If I moved fast, I could be out of the house and sprinted for the gate within seconds. He was undoubtedly faster, but chucking some of those pretty pieces of hallway furniture in his path might slow him down. Though his fey ears with their delicate pointed arches would pick up my whisper of movement from me. Okay, she needs to give up. Listen, she needs to give up on trying to escape. Why does she keep... I don't know, man. Anyway, who are you? I managed to say. His light golden hair was so similar to the color of his beast form's pelt. Those giant claws undoubtedly still lurked just below the surface of his skin. Sit, he said gruffly, waving a broad hand no to encompass the table. Eat. She needs to take care of her family. She's desperate. I know, but like, it can't happen. They're like, it's doomed, you know? Anyway, I ran through the chants in my head again and again. Not worth it. Easing my ravenous hunger was definitely not worth the risk of being enslaved to him in mind and soul. He let out a low growl, unless you'd rather faint. It's not safe for humans, I managed to say. Offense be damned. He huffed a laugh, more feral than anything. The food is fine for you to eat, human. Those strange green eyes pinned me to the spot, as if he could detect every muscle in my body that was priming to bolt. Leave if you want, he added with a flash of teeth. I'm not your jailer. The gates are open. You can live anywhere in Prithian. And no doubt he no doubt be eaten or tormented by a wretched fairy. But while every inch of this place was civilized and clean and beautiful, I had to get out, had to get back. That promise to my mother, cold and vain as she was all I had. I made no move towards the food. Fine, he said, the word laced with a growl, and began serving himself. I didn't have to face the consequences of refusing him another time. As someone strode past me, heading right for the head of the table. Well, the stranger said. Another high fae, red-haired, and finely dressed in a tunic of muted silver. He too wore a mask. He sketched a bow to the seated male. He sketched a bow to the seated male and then crossed his arms. Somehow he hadn't spotted me where I was still pressed against the wall. Well, what? My captor cocked his head. The movement more animal than human. Is Andres dead, then? A nod from my captor, savior, whatever he was. I'm sorry, he said quietly. How? The stranger demanded, his knuckles white as he gripped his muscled arms. An ash arrow, said the other. His red-haired companion hissed. The treaty's summons led me to the mortal. I gave her safe haven. A girl? A mortal girl actually killed Andres? Not a question so much as venom-coated strings of words. He glanced at the end of the table, where my empty chair stood, and the summons found the girl responsible. The gold-masked one gave a low, bitter laugh and pointed at me. The treaty's magic brought me right to her doorstep. The stranger whirled with fluid grace. His mask was bronze and fashioned after a fox's features, concealing all but the lower half of his face, along with most of what looked like a wicked, slashing scar from his brow down to his jaw. It didn't hide the eye that was missing, or the carved golden orb that had replaced it, and moved as though he could use it. It fixed on me. Oh shit. Hold on. Nia with a gift there. Appreciate it. Furry. Or Fiery with the primer. Thank you guys. Thank you. Don't believe your timer, by the way. It's not adding timer to the subs. Okay, what's the timer? How much time do we have left? If you can, message Kay or Yeah, message K or Amar, and they'll fix it. Yeah. She's sleeping? Okay, I'll pause the timer and it'll be fixed while it's paused. Don't worry, don't worry. Don't worry. Even from across the room, I could see this remaining russet eye widen. He sniffed once, his lips curled a bit to reveal straight white teeth. And then he turned to the other fairy. You're joking, he said quietly. That scrawny thing brought down Andres with a single ash arrow? Bastard, an absolute bastard. A pity I didn't have the arrow now, or I could shoot him instead. She admitted to it, the golden hair one said tightly, tracing the rim of his goblet with a finger. A long lethal claw slid out, scraping against the metal. I fought to keep my breath steadily, especially as he added, she didn't try to deny it. Holy shit, 10 gifted. Thank you so much for the 10 gifted. Scooby with a 10 gifted. Whoops. Wait, was it 20 gifted? Did I just bug out? Honey Graham Jaws with the 5 months, thank you. Time will be added, don't worry. Thank you so much. The fox masked fairy sank onto the edge of the table, the light catching in his long fire red hair. Okay, whenever the timer gets to 1 minute, let me know, chat, or 2 minutes. I'll pause it on my screen and we'll fix the timer, okay? I don't want it to let it run out. The fox masked fairy sank onto the edge of the table, the light catching into his long, fine red hair. I could understand his mask with that brutal scar and missing eye, but the other high face seemed fine. Perhaps he wore it out of solidarity. Maybe that explained the absurd fashion. Well, the red-haired ant of one seethed. Now we're stuck with that, thanks to your useless mercy, and you've ruined. I stepped forward, only a step. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but being spoken about that way, I kept my mouth shut, but it was enough. Did you enjoy killing my friend human? The red-haired one said. Did you hesitate? Or was the hatred in your heart riding you too hard to consider sparing him? It must have been so satisfying for a small mortal thing like you to take him down. The gold-haired one said nothing, but his jaw tightened. As they studied me, I reached for a knife that wasn't there. Anyway, the fox mask one continued, facing his companion again with a sneer. He would likely laugh if I ever drew a weapon on him. Perhaps there's a way to... Lucian, my captor said quietly, the name echoing with a hint of snarl. Behave. Lucian went rigid, but he hopped off the edge of the table and bowed deeply to me. My apologies, lady. Another joke at my expense. I'm Lucian, courtier and emissary. He gestured to me with a flourish. Your eyes are like stars and your hair like burnished gold. He cocked his head, waiting for me to give him my name, but telling him anything about me, about my family and where I came from. Her name is Feyre, said the one in charge, the beast. He must have learned my name at my cottage. Those striking green eyes met mine again and then flicked to the door. Alice will take you to your room. He could use a bath and fresh clothes. Alice will take you to your room. You could use a bath and fresh clothes. Will you read the next book? Yeah, we'll see. I couldn't decide whether it was an... Okay, wait. Let me pause the timer for you guys. I'm sure it's giving you guys anxiety. And low-key same. I don't want it to hit 0. 1 second, okay? Let me pause the timer. I'm not sure why it's not updating. Whoa. Whoa. Hold on. What time was it on? $4:30. It's not working. Bro, what's going on? Dude, this dashboard is fucking up. Okay. It's not over. It's not over. Okay. So how many subs? I mean, they'll be able to count how many subs they had, but we were at 430 before adding the subs. So we just need, if you can, Sid, message Kay, and tell her to pause the time whenever they wake up. 14 subs should be added. 14 subs plus 430. And pause the timer at that. Oh, fuck. All right. Back to reading. Oh, shit. All right. Yeah, well, I'll finish off the chapter. But you guys get this for free. I'll give it to you, okay? Sorry about the hassle. But at least you guys can enjoy this with a peace of mind, you know? I know staring at the timer is anxiety-inducing. Where did I leave off at? Fuck. Her name is Feyre, said the one in charge, the beast. He must have learned my name at my cottage. Those striking green eyes met mine again, then flicked to the door. Alice will take you to your room. You could use a bath and fresh clothes. I couldn't decide whether it was an insult or not. There was a firm hand on my elbow, and I flinched. A rotund, brown-haired woman in a simple brass bird mask tugged on my arm and inclined her head towards the open door behind us. Her white apron was crisp above her homespun brown dress, a servant. The mask had to be some sort of trend then. If they cared so much about their clothes, about what even their servants wore, maybe they were shallow and vain enough for me to deceive. Despite their master's warrior clothes, still, they were high fae. I would have to be clever and quiet and bide my time until I could escape. So I let Alice lead me away. Room, not cell. Small relief then. I barely made it a few steps before Lucian growled, "That's the hand the cauldron thought to deal us. She brought Andras down. We never should have sent him out there. None of them should have been out there. It was a fool's mission. His growl was more bitter than threatening. Could he shapeshift as well? Maybe we should just take a stand. Maybe it's time to say enough. Dump the girl somewhere, kill her, I don't care. She's nothing but a burden here. She'd sooner put a knife in your back and then talk to you, or any of us. I kept my breathing calm, my spine locking, and no, the other bit out. Not until we know for certain that there is no other way, we will make a move. And as for the girl, she stays, unharmed, end of discussion. Her life in that hovel was hell enough. Wait, what? Her life in that hovel was hell enough. My cheeks heated, even while I loosened a tight breath, and I avoided looking at Alice as I felt her eyes slid to mine. A hovel? I suppose that's what a cottage was compared to this place. Then you've got your work cut out for you, old son, Lucian said. I'm sure her life will be a fine replacement for Andra's. Maybe she can even train with the others or on the border. A snarl of irritation resonated through the air. The shining, spotless halls swallowed me up before I could hear more. Why is he going to such great lengths? That's what I don't understand. Why is he going to such great lengths for her? Huh. Perhaps needs something from the humans. Alice led me through halls of gold and silver until we came to a lavish bedroom on the second level. I'll admit, I didn't fight that hard when Alice and two other servants, also masked, bathed me, cut my hair, and then plucked me until I felt like a chicken being prepared for dinner. For all I knew, I might very well have been the next meal. It was only the high phase promise, to live out my days in Prithian instead of dying, that kept me from being stuck in the thought. While those fairies also looked human, save for their ears, I never learned what the high fae called their servants, but I didn't dare to ask or speak to them at all. Not when just having their hands on me. Having them so close was enough to make me focus solely on not trembling. Still, I took one look at the velvet turquoise dress Alice had placed on the bed and wrapped my white dress gown tightly around me. Sinking into a chair and pleading for my old clothes to be returned, Alice refused, and when I begged again, trying my best to sound pathetic and sad and pitiful, she stormed out. I hadn't worn a dress in years. I wasn't about to start, not when escape was my main priority. I wouldn't be able to move freely in a gown, bundled in my robe. I sat for minute after minute, the chattering of small birds in the garden beyond the windows, the only sounds. No screaming, no clashing weapons, no hint of any slaughter or torture. The bedroom was larger than our entire cottage. Its walls were pale green, delicately sketched with pattern of gold, and moldings were golden as well. I might have thought it was tacky had the ivory furniture and rugs not complemented it so well. The gigantic bed was a similar color scheme, and the curtains that hung from the towering headboard drifted in the faint breeze from the open windows. My dressing gown was of the finest silk, edged with lace, simple and exquisite enough that I ran a finger along the lapels. The few stories I'd heard had been wrong, or 500 years of separation had muddled them. Yes, I was still prey, still born weak and useless compared to them, but this place was peaceful, calm, useless, or unless that was an illusion too, and the loophole in the treaty was a lie, a trick to set me at ease before they destroyed me. The high fae liked to play with their food. The door creaked and Alice returned. Oh my god, it's loud outside. The door creaked and Alice returned, a bundle of clothing in her hands. She lifted a sodden grayish shirt. You want to wear this? I gaped at the holes in the sides and sleeves. It fell apart the moment the laundresses put it in the water. She held up a few scraps of brown. Here's what's left of your pants. I clamped down on the curse building in my chest. She might be a servant, but she could easily kill me too. Will you wear the dress now? She demanded. I knew I should get up, should agree, but I slumped farther into my seat. Alice stared at me down for a moment before leaving again. She returned with trousers and a tunic that fit me well, both of them rich with color. A bit fancy, but I didn't complain when I donned the white shirt, nor when I buttoned the dark blue tunic and ran my hands over the scratchy golden thread embroidered on the lapels. It had to cost a fortune itself, and it tugged at the useless part of my mind that admired lovely and strange and colorful things. I was too young to remember much before my father's downfall. He tolerated me enough to allow me to loiter about his offices, and sometimes even explained various goods and their worth, the details of which I'd long since forgotten. My time in his office, full of the scents and exotic spices and the music of foreign tongues, made up the majority of my few happy memories. I didn't need to know the worth of everything in this room to understand that the emerald curtains alone, silk with gold velvet, could have fed us for a lifetime. A chill scuttled down my spine. It had been days since I'd left. The venison would be running low already. Alice herded me into a low-backed chair before the darkened fireplace, and I didn't fight back as she ran a comb through my hair and began braiding it. "You're hardly more than skin and bones," she said, her finger luxurious against my scalp. "Winter does that to poor mortals," I said, fighting to keep the sharpness from my tone. She huffled a laugh. "If you're wise, you'll keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. It'll do you more good than a loose tongue. And keep your wits about you. Even your senses will try to betray you here." I tried not to cringe at the warning. Alice went on. "Some folk are bound to be upset about Andres. Yet, if you ask me, Andres was a good sentinel. Andres was a good sentinel, but he knew what he would face when he crossed the wall. Knew he'd likely find trouble. And the others understand the terms of the treaty too. Even if they might resent your presence here, thanks to the mercy of our master, so keep your head down, and none of them will bother you. Though Lucian, he could do with someone snapping at him, if you've the courage for it. I didn't, and when I went to ask more about whom I should try to avoid, she had already finished with my hair and opened the door to the hall." All right. Chapter 7. We're done with chapter 6 and chapter 5. So yeah, interesting. So she got into the ferry, into Prythian. She's into Prythian and reached the fairy's, I guess, mansion or whatever it is. And everything is just super luxurious, gold everywhere, gardens inside and out, has servants. They like to wear masks. So the fairies like to wear masks. And the main master, I guess, the warrior, green eyes with golden hair. And I think the shirt was green as well. And it was it was just a plain green shirt. And then in comes Lucian, which is the master's son, red long hair, missing an eye, golden eye, and a scar from the eyebrow down to the lip. And and Andres, I guess, we don't know the correlation with them yet. However, someone meaningful to them. Not his son, his second in command. Oh, I thought you said son. Did I not? Huh. I read something about a son. Am I tripping? There said something about son. Oh, I'm tripping. Okay. Anyway. It might have been like a title. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so second in command, Lucian. She's still contemplating on escaping. And then we met Alice, the servant, which Alice took her to go shower, dress up, took her to the bedroom that she's staying in. The bedroom is larger than the cottage she was staying at with her old family. She's still thinking about her family and going back to them and how the venison's running out. And Alice was, I guess, cleaned her up, braided her hair, washed her and everything. And then she headed out towards the hall. And that was it. I think that was And one thing to keep in mind is like they have high fae magic that she can smell. It's very metallic kind of smell. What book were we talking about? So we're reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, Akotar. Anyway, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it.